Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Take 5. Let's jump right in. So we've been discussing the sermon from Sunday that was entitled Love in Limbo. And we're talking about the story in Genesis 22 of Abraham and Isaac. And the most important thing that you and I have to remember throughout all of this we're talking about this week is that the greatest evidence of our love for God is found in our obedience, our trust, and our sacrifice. The greatest evidence of our love for God is shown through our obedience to Him, our trust in Him, and our willingness to sacrifice. The last 2 days we have talked about obedience and trust, and today, real briefly, we're going to talk about the last one, which is sacrifice, and how Abraham showed God how much he loved him through his willingness to sacrifice. So we've read almost the whole story of Abraham and Isaac in Genesis 22, and I'm not going to take the time to reread that. You know what has happened so far. God has come to Abraham and told Abraham that He wants him to sacrifice his one and only son Isaac, the promised child, the miracle baby that God promised to Abraham and Sarah they would have when they were almost 100 years old. And we found out that Abraham didn't even question God about it. The very next morning, he just got up and obeyed God. He did exactly what God commanded him to do. And then we read a little bit later where Isaac, as they're on their journey, Isaac turns to Abraham and says, "Father, we've got the wood, we've got the fire, we have everything we need for a sacrifice, but where's the sheep for the burnt offering?" And Abraham replied and showed his love for God through his trust. He replied to Isaac and said, "Son, don't worry about that. God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering." And so far, through his obedience and through his trust, Abraham has proved his love for God. And the third thing he did was, to prove his love for God, was through his willingness to sacrifice. Genesis 22 verses 9 through 10 say that when they arrived at the place where God had told him to go, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. Then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Now, if this were me, somewhere along in here, I would have been like, "Okay, God, when are you going to, I know you're testing me. I think you're testing me. When have I proven myself? When is enough enough? I've traveled 3 days in obedience to you to get to this place you told me to go. I have built an altar. I have got the wood ready for the fire. Everything is prepared, God. Now, at this point, surely you know that I love you." God hasn't told him to stop yet. So he builds an altar. He gets the wood ready. He ties Isaac on the altar, places him up there. In verse 10, maybe it's the craziest verse in the whole chapter. Verse 10 says, "And Abraham picked up the knife to kill his own son as a sacrifice." Abraham was willing to go through with the sacrifice. He was willing to sacrifice the most important thing in his life, his one and only son. Abraham was willing to withhold absolutely nothing from God. Abraham proved in this moment that he loved God so much that there was nothing in this world that was more important than his relationship with God. And he was willing to give up everything that he loved and everything that he cared about in this life to prove that to God. You see, I think that the level of our love for God is directly related to the level of our sacrifice. The level of our love for God, how much we love God, is directly related to our level of sacrifice. And I think that that's true for anything in life, right? If you think about it, the things that we love the most are the things that we are willing to sacrifice the most for. And so the level of our love for God or for anything in this life is proven by our level of sacrifice. So my question to you today is, does God know that you love Him? Does God know that you love Him? Or if the truth be told, do you sacrifice more time and more money and more effort for other things of this world than you do for God? Because we can prove our love for a thing by how much we sacrifice for it. So, one more time I ask you today, does God know that you love Him? Abraham was willing to sacrifice everything that he loved. The most important thing in his life, he was willing to kill his only son, Isaac. What are you willing to sacrifice to prove your love for God? Hey, I hope you have a great day today. I'll see you right here one more time tomorrow at Take 5.